Doing an oil change today on a 2019 Yamaha Waverunner EX Sport. So things you're going to need. This is a new tool for me. I bought this. I have an electric one I've used and I've never really liked it. So I'm going to go ahead and try out one of these hand actuated ones. I'll kind of give you a review on what I think. You're going to need an oil filter wrench. Now, I'm not going to change the oil filter because the service manual indicates this is its first oil change, and given the hours on it, you don't change the filter, you just change the oil. So I'm just going to do that. But if you have to replace the filter, I'll show you where it is, and then you're just going to use this to twist it off. And as a reminder, always put some oil on the gasket because you want to make sure that you don't damage the gasket putting it back on. Then this is a adapter for a garden hose, so for the water intake on this. And so we're going to need to heat up the oil, so you have to run the motor. So talk a little bit about that in a bit. 3 quarts of Yamaha lube. I'm using, it's obviously the marine oil because this is a boat, a funnel, and I recommend a long funnel, and then a garden hose with a point of use turn-off valve. And I'll explain why that's important later as well. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is run this for a little bit to heat up the oil. But with any PWC, or at least the ones I'm aware of, you're going to want to, so you get the lift off the seat, and before you start it, you want to vent the engine compartment. So on a boat, this will obviously be a blower fan, but on this, it'll be these compartments. So I'm going to take the seat off, and then I'm going to pull out the storage area. So there's the fire extinguisher. And then I'm also going to, a few required items. So take these out, and so now you can see I've got complete access to the engine area. And what I'm going to want to do now is, you see this right here? This is for the water supply, and this is so when you want to run it on dry land. Now, obviously when you pull these out of the water, it's okay, or before you're about to launch, obviously you might want to know if it's going to start. It's okay to start and run it for a few seconds, but if you start doing it for any great length of time, you will damage the engine, unless of course you take advantage of the fact that these can take a fresh water supply, and that is what this adapter on the end of my garden hose is for. So what we're going to do is we're going to get that connected up. And then why do I have the point of view shutoff valve? And that's specifically because if I'm working on this and for some reason it's running and the engine should die, if you have the water running when the engine is not, it can backflow the water actually into the cylinders and cause engine damage. So if for some reason it should die, I can immediately turn off that valve, and which case prevent any engine damage. So first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and get this garden hose connected up. I will try and do it, but I may not be able to do it on camera just based on needing 2 hands, but we'll give it a shot. Okay, going to connect the water supply here. See if we can do it one-handed. Okay, so I was able to get that in one-handed. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start up the Waverunner, and then we'll turn on the water, and then we'll let this run for maybe five minutes, and then we'll be able to get into the oil change part of this. So let's go ahead and start this. Got the key in, so we'll go ahead and start this up. Okay, it's running. want to rev the engine past idle when it's running on cooling. Now obviously I just revved it a couple times to get any water out of the system. That's what you do when you pull it out of the water initially. And so we're good. Just for safety's sake, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this, so in the process of changing the oil, if I should bump the valve, I have to worry about it filling the engine with water. And we'll go ahead and move on to the next step. Okay, so this is the oil check and fill. So it just twists off. I'm going to need 2 hands, I think. So anyway, we'll pull that out, and that's how we're going to gain access to the basically the oil fill, and that's where we're going to put the pump hose down to suck out the oil. Okay, so just going to fish the hose down the fill well there. Got it in. And then this is the oil pump. So I might not be able to do this two-handed. I'll do what I can. I'm going to need another hand, but basically I'm going to start pumping this and the oil is going to come out. So I'm going to need to keep pumping, but you can see here the oil is starting to flow because I've created enough of a vacuum, and it's definitely ready for a change. So let's go ahead and finish this up here. So I'll keep pumping and get the container full, and then I'll talk through the next part. Okay, so all the oil is done draining out. You can see no more oil is getting pulled through the tube. And when I come over here to my canister, it is filled up to about there with oil. So that's good. So now the next step would be to replace the oil filter, but in this particular case, this is this machine's first oil change, and the service or the owner's manual indicates you're not required to change the oil filter. So I'm going to go ahead and abide by what the Yamaha is recommending. But here is your oil filter, and you just simply take your oil filter wrench here, spin this off, and then you'll go ahead and just make sure you get a little, when you put the new one on, get some oil on the gasket and twist it back on. I'll probably append to this video a quick part just on the oil filter, but once again, I'm going to follow the recommendations in the owner's manual for this, and we'll go ahead and now put some oil in it. Just as a reminder, you always want to properly recycle your oil. So I'm going to pour this oil in a container that I can take to the auto parts store, and they will properly recycle it so that it doesn't end up somewhere where it can hurt the environment. Okay, so I've got 3 quarts of Yamaha oil that is for this particular Waverunner. It also obviously goes in their boats and several other things. And I've got my funnel where we extract the oil from. It's really helpful in my opinion to have one of these long funnels, because then I don't have to reach down in the unit to get the oil in there, so there's less of a chance that I'm going to spill inside there where it's harder to clean up. And so now I'm going to go ahead and pour 2 quarts in, because I at least took out 2 quarts, and then I'm going to measure where I'm at, and then based on where I'm at, the way to get the final measurement is I have to go back and we have to run this for 5 minutes, see what the oil level looks like after we've run it for a bit. So we're going to go ahead and start with having the 2 quarts. Okay, so I'm just going to add in the other quart. Okay, so I've got the 2 quarts poured in, so now I'm going to go ahead and check the level. Okay, try not to drip any oil in the unit. So let's look at this. And so it's pretty much right at the, sorry about that. It's pretty much right at the low mark. So that's enough for me to want to start up the engine, run it for 5 minutes, we'll see where we're at, and then we'll top it off. Okay, so I'm now going to run it so we can there's enough oil in it, so it definitely won't get starved. So I'm now going to, I got the cap back on the oil. I've got the inlet for the water connected up so that, and when I start this now, I'll be able to turn on the water, make sure the engine doesn't get damaged, and then I'm going to let this run for about 5 minutes. So let's go ahead and give it a start. One thing I probably should have mentioned before we started this video, this right here is the exhaust. So obviously we're running this to get the oil hot. That's the oil filler right there. So they're pretty close to each other. You do not want to touch that exhaust because it gets hot and it'll burn you. So just be aware of that. And then the other thing is I went ahead and ran it. I checked the oil. I just added a little bit. It was right at full, and that's in direct correlation with what the manual says, where you have to run it at idle for about 5 minutes to get it oil up to temp to measure. So it looks good. Now, other thing that I always do is check for oil leaks, which is a little sometimes interesting on a marine engine, but you can see by the filler plug it looks okay. And then here's my oil filter, which is, I talked about earlier, we didn't touch, but run my hands there. I'm not seeing any oil get picked up, so that looks solid. I don't see any oil in the bottom here, which is the lowest point, so it would definitely leak to there. So everything looks good. So I'm gonna button this thing up. Make sure you get the flush cap. Make sure you get this flush cap here on, and then button this thing back up and have it take a journey to the lake. So thanks for watching my videos. As always, please subscribe, comment, and like below.